All right. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Kitsap Society Audubon's general meeting. Sorry, Kitsap Audubon Society. Wow. Um, I'm Kevin Iyer. I'm KS co-president, and hopefully with you in the room tonight we have co-president Lynn Wilmot. And if you could raise your hand if you're there, that's great. Vice President Jean Bullock, Secretary and Event Communications Coordinator Justin Carrington, and board member at large Sandy Bullock. And are there any other members of the board here with us tonight? I won't be able to see.
Hi,
Anyway, oh yes,
the education board.
yeah. Sandy Spears on education or outreach committee.
Yeah,
Great
okay,
to
yeah,
have you here tonight.
yeah. Yeah, good to be here.
A big thank you to Michael Zerog, our web manager and Zoom host, for helping things run smoothly tonight, and a special welcome to those attending for the first time. We're excited to have you. Um, April's an important month for wildlife, and I hope you've been enjoying all the bird song in the mornings. Nightly migration numbers are growing with thousands of birds flying across Kitsap at night. Their numbers are predicted to peak in early May. We just got news this week from Jamie Acker that our Moda station at Point No Point picked up a Dunlin, and the bird flew from a town just north of Sacramento to our station in 29 hours, and a couple hours later was detected in British Columbia. So check out more on bird migration at birdcast.org if you haven't been on that site. It's amazing. Just type in your county, and you can help birds that migrate at night by purchasing down-facing light fixtures or turning off lights during the peak season. Just wanted to highlight that. Many birds are on the nest this month. Most land bird species rely heavily on insects to feed their young, which in turn rely on healthy plant populations. So you can do a lot by planting with purpose. We have some great native plant nurseries and programs in our area, and a great host of knowledge in the room on good plants to choose. So make sure to talk to somebody nearby. There are so many different events for us this month, so hopefully you got to see some of those on the slideshow. I'll just reiterate those real quick. Earth Day is April 22nd this year. So Saturday, April 12th begins the 2-week saga of events. We'll be having a Let's Go Birding Together field trip on the 12th at Port Orchard Waterfront from 10 to noon in the morning. LGBTQ plus community and allies are showing up to learn about birds and birding starting at Etta Turner Park. And they'll be walking the Port Orchard waterfront from there. Sunday, April 13th is the Bainbridge Island Environmental Conference from 1 to 4 p.m. at Islandwood. And Bainbridge Island KS volunteers will lead a group after the presentations along the beautiful paths at Islandwood. It's not just Bainbridge Island volunteers, it's everybody from KS. So note that we'll be counting birds and other species. On Saturday, April 19th, is the Earth Day celebration at Fish Park, Paulsboro's Fish Park. It's from 10 to 2. KS volunteers will host a table there, and we'll invite participants to learn about birds and join our organization. If you're interested in volunteering, it's a really low energy task. It's a lot of fun. And finally, we'll be joining other conservation organizations in a countywide collaboration for the City Nature Challenge at the end of the month. We invite you to join us and others from around the county on Saturday, April 26th from 1 to 4 p.m. at Port Gamble Forest Heritage Park's Stottlemyre entrance. And we will walk along trails there, counting all the living things we can ID, plants, animals, fungi, you name it. Should be a blast. Okay, so those are all the announcements. Although the next thing we have to move on to, I want to hand it over to Sandy Bullock to walk us through. It's the April general election today. So Sandy, would you take the stage?
Making her way up.
Waiting for the drum roll here. This is my crib shoot. Very official looking.
You like to stand right in front.
Do you have a count of how many people are booked in? at home, so
Yeah,
that we, okay,
Yeah. I'll
so
hold
that
it,
we know whether we have a
Yeah.
quorum. Okay. Well, good evening. Once a year, we get busy and go around and try to twist people's arms, you know, to take a big commitment to the board and as an officer. And we thank everybody who has done it this year. And I see Lynn's here and Justin and Kevin and Crystal. I don't know. Do you see if Crystal's on? Justin? Crystal, our treasurer. So what we usually do is our nominating committee works on it for a month or so and then comes up with a recommended slate of people who are willing to run for the job or basically do the job. And so then that finishes up at the end of March. We present that slate of people at this meeting. And we also have an election. And it has been published in the Kingfisher, which I have Kingfishers. If anybody here is not a member and doesn't get the Kingfisher already, see me and I'll give you a nice newsletter. So let's go on. I'm going to present the names that the nominating committee has recommended. And these people are willing to serve. And what we'll do is we'll go through the names. Then the procedure is to ask if there are any nominations from the floor. And it seems odd, but I have to ask you 3 times. That's protocol. So, and then if there are none, we do need a treasurer this year, starting July 1st. But that's the only office that's open, that we haven't had somebody say that they were willing to do it. So anyway, let's begin. We have Kevin Iyer. Wait a minute, Lynn Wilmot for president. Kevin Iyer for vice president. Justin Carrington over here. For secretary, he's willing to keep on with that job. And like I say, we don't have a treasurer. And other board members can be appointed or stand where they don't have to be voted in. So what I'm going to ask you now, anybody want me to reread that list? Are we good here? Okay. So I'm going to ask you 3 times. Are there any other nominations? Don't everybody jump up at once. Are there any other nominations for these positions? That's president, vice president, and secretary. And one last time to make it official, are there any other nominations? And that includes people watching online. Michael, how would they indicate if they want to respond?
You could raise their hand or type in the chat.
Okay, you can either type in the chat if you want, and you can nominate yourself. Or if you know of someone that has asked you to pass on the word that they'd like to be, considered for an officer's position. You can either use your chat or on the screen or type in something. Okay. So I'm going to wait a minute or two and let me know if your laptop comes alive with people that are just clamoring to be in one of these positions. And if not, no.
We're good.
Oh, we're good. Okay. So next, what I'll do is, I'll read the list once more, and then I'm gonna ask if somebody on the floor here, or it could be online, would make a motion to enter a unanimous vote for the slate of officers that I presented to you. Okay, and that's Lynn Wilmot. Do you want to just hold your hand up for people who might not know you, Lynn? She does a terrific job. Kevin Iyer, as you see, he's got his literature there for you to see, and there he is campaigning. And Justin, you want to give a wave there? Okay. So would somebody like to make a motion to cast a unanimous vote for this slate of officers? That's all you have to say. Kathy?
Sure. I move that we accept this slate of officers unanimously.
Thank you. Is there a second? Okay, we have a motion and a second on the floor. So I'm going to say, all those in favor, please signify by, and Michael, have you told them how to vote on, maybe you want to do that now?
We're going to do it a little bit different.
Okay,
So do a little differently online than a poll. If there is someone that's opposed, they would raise their hand.
okay. So we'll count them unless somebody raises their hand and said no. Okay. All right, otherwise you're gonna be counted as a positive, those folks that are with us on Zoom. Okay, so all in the room in favor of the motion on the floor to accept the slate of officers and enter a unanimous vote for them. Okay, I see Bob in the back. Okay, we've got another one. So could you raise your hand? We do need to take a vote.
Just say aye.
Aye. If you're not a member, I don't think people can vote if they're not members, okay? But you might just say, sounds good to me. Okay, so I guess that's it. Kevin, did you hear that?
Yeah.
And Lynn, of course, she's got a smile, and Justin's thinking about it. Okay, thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Sandy. We got a round of applause too for those that just got voted in again. Thank you. Kevin, back to you.
Thanks, Michael. Thanks, Sandy. I have the pleasure of introducing tonight's speaker. We're so excited to have Peter Harrison speak with us tonight on his favorite family of seabirds, the albatross. You can tell with that sign back there, I can see it. Peter Harrison is a renowned seabird expert, conservationist, artist, and author of over a dozen books. Published in 2021, the award-winning Seabirds, The New Identification Guide, is a comprehensive guide to the world's 434 seabird species and the culmination of a lifetime dedicated to seabirding. In recognition of his global conservation efforts, Peter received an MBE from Her Majesty the Queen Elizabeth II, followed by the Royal Society for the Protection of Birds, prestigious Conservation Gold Medal. He was awarded the New York Linnean Society's Eisenman Medal for Excellence in Ornithology, and in 2022, Peter received one of BirdLife's highest honors for his contributions to the knowledge and conservation of seabirds. Peter serves on the board of directors for Friends of South Georgia Island and is proud that his efforts contributed to the successful South Georgia Habitat Restoration Project. In 2023, Peter was selected by BirdLife South Africa as the first patron for the Mouse-Free Marion Project to help conserve the albatrosses and petrels of Marion Island. And tonight, we get to hear from him on just how amazing these birds are and why we must act now to help them. Thank you so much, Peter.
Thank you very much.
15 minutes and something.
Okay, thank you.
If you have items to check out, please bring them to the front desk for assistance at this time. Computers will shut down in about 5 minutes, so make sure to save or print your work. The library will reopen tomorrow at 10 a.m. Thank you and have a good night.
Well, folks, thank you for that very nice introduction. There's a lot of establishment stuff in there. I guess my proudest day of my life was going to meet the Queen. And I always said that I was very anti-establishment until they asked me to join. I am a conservationist, I'm an artist and a writer, and I've devoted my whole life actually, since the age of about 6 or 7, I have sketchbooks going back that far. And I have written, yes, over a dozen books. But my last one took 16 years of work between my 60th and 77th birthday. That's probably my biggest work ever. And finishing off, I don't think I'll be doing any more books. But they sure wants me to do one on you. And you know, we meet a lot of very interesting people when we do these trips around the world. You are the cargo. And so the name of this book, the title, and the title is always the hardest thing to get. If you get a good title, you can write a book. And so the title of my next book, if I ever get around to doing it, is simply Dangerous Cargo. And you wouldn't believe the things that have gone on ships. I've been on several ships that have gone down. I've been on aircraft that have crashed. We've lost a few people here and there, but mostly I bring them all back. And tonight you will see a few shots of places that some of you are thinking of going to, like, for instance, South Georgia. And I'll come into that a little bit later on. I don't know if the people at home can see this. I should, I guess, stand over here and wave through the little window. Good evening, everybody that's out there somewhere. But if you can see behind me on my right-hand side, there's a picture of an albatross. I took this photograph just before it missed me by about 3 inches. And when we were thinking about doing a series of lectures, we decided on a spur of a moment, well, nobody knows quite how big an albatross is. So for those of you that haven't talked to me this evening, let me just say, this is an albatross, and it's the actual size of an albatross. From its wingtip to wingtip, it's 11 feet 2 inches. And so this is the size of the largest of the albatrosses. We'll go into these in much more detail, but this really is a magnificent bird, the monarch of the bird world that we'll now come to. So folks, if we can have lights out. And I tend to walk around, which doesn't always help things, but maybe that camera over there will pick me up. The title of our lecture this afternoon or this evening is simply Ocean Nomads. And we could have it as subtitled, I guess, The Albatrosses of the World. The open ocean is to birds what space is to mankind. It's the last great frontier. For most birds, it poses the harshest, the most unyielding environment on the globe. And it's an environment that covers nearly 2/3 of our misnamed home, planet Earth. And yet, for those of you that occasionally get out offshore, maybe on pelagics from near bay and so forth, you'll know that you can be maybe 10, 15, 50, 100, even 1,000 miles from the nearest point of land. You can be at sea, you can go to the rails of a ship, you can look seawards, and you can see a bird. But these are not ordinary birds. These are not sparrows, crows, or warblers. These are seabirds. And of the world's 340 or so seabird species, there is one group that should fill you with awe, fill you with a sense of enchantment and a sense of wonderment. And of course, those birds are the albatrosses of this world. These birds are absolutely magnificent. They're huge birds, as you can see beside me on the right-hand side here, 11 feet 2 from wingtip to wingtip. And what I would like to do here this evening is share with each of you some of my own albatross experiences gained over the past 60, 70 or so years. And my earnest hope is that I will instill in each of you some of that same awe, some of that same wonderment, some of that same enchantment that I always feel while working with these birds. Let me put this in perspective. Albatrosses are the largest winged birds in the world. Of course, you're Americans, and so you think you've got the biggest everything. That's not quite true. Condors are smaller than albatrosses and don't have a wingspan anywhere near that, only about 9 or so feet.
Sorry. We had a malfunction here.
You want me to stop?
Yes. Apparently they're not seeing that. Okay.
You think we might have it?
Yep.
Okay, so albatrosses, we were talking about size of wings and the fact that most Americans feel that condors were the largest of all flying birds. The heaviest of all flying birds, and somebody's named after one out here tonight, is Corey, the Corey bustard. Sorry, Corey, I could not resist that. The Corey bustards are 46 pounds in weight and are admittedly the heaviest flying birds in the world. The biggest bird in the world, of course, the ostrich. Elephant birds are now extinct, so they're gone, but who knows with recent DNA experiments. And so the wandering albatross, biggest wingspan of any bird. This bird also flies further than any other bird or any other life form. You're looking at an animal, a bird here that does something like 18 round-trip journeys to the moon and back in its lifetime. Yes, we'll go into some of these feats in a moment. And of course, the one thing that really turns people on, I'm 78 years of age, and there's an albatross. She's a beautiful, beautiful lady called Wisdom, and she is the same age as I am. She's 78 years of age. And so these are, you're looking, when you look at an albatross like this, you're looking at a bird that's the biggest flying bird in the world, the most itinerant life form on the face of the planet, and the oldest of the birds in the world. These birds are simply the monarchs of the bird world, but their kingdom is not one of castles, hillsides, or woods, forests, etc., but the open ocean, sometimes rough and windswept and others serene. So come with me now to that world, the world of the albatross. Let's start asking ourselves some questions. How many species are there? Are they like penguins and are only found in one hemisphere, the southern, or do they actually come into the northern hemisphere as well? And not only how many species are there, but as I say, how long do they live? How far do they fly? How many eggs do they lay? How many husbands or wives do they have in those 50, 60, 70, 80 years? Because divorce is actually quite common. And the reason for that, as the ladies will know here, a good male is hard to find. And that's certainly the case in our albatross world. They are beautiful birds, and you can see them out at sea, and you never really get quite close enough to appreciate their beauty, but they are without doubt really stunning birds. Just look at the colors of the bill. These are gray-headed albatrosses. There are 48,000 pairs in the world, and half of those live on South Georgia. So these are the gray-headed albatrosses. Now, when I first came down to the Southern Oceans, life in general was pretty straightforward, and taxonomy in particular. And you might ask yourself, where does the word albatross come from? Many of the terms that we use in the nautical parlance, the English, of course, followed the Spanish and the Portuguese, and they took words and they bastardized them. You've all heard of Alcatraz. Alcatraz is Portuguese for pelican. And so Alcatraz, the British sailors, anything large and big, and certainly if it was white, was an Alcatraz. And then it became albatross, and then albatross. And then the first example that we find of the word albatross in the English language is in the diaries of one John Fryer, who in 1672 was rounding the Cape of Good Hope down in southern Africa. And his diaries, 3 pages long, talking about these huge black and white birds that followed their vessel day after day with hardly a beat of their wings. And so this was John Fryer, 1772. So a little bit later than that, I arrived in the Southern Hemisphere. This is me in my 40s. That's actually at Cape Horn. And we were doing a bird survey of the Cape Horn Islands in a small yacht, 36 feet long, the Totorory. We lost our mast. We were pitch-poled twice. We capsized several times. We got back into the Ushuaia under jury rig and were promptly arrested as British spies, spying for the British government, because in those days the Falklands War was going on. So we had our moments, but in these days, life was a lot simpler. And that was certainly the case with the taxonomy of albatrosses. I'm sure that you all know whether you're really aggressive king type birders, or whether you're just sort of weekends and probably don't go out too much out into the ocean anyway. But taxonomy has really changed a lot with our albatrosses. In the old days, and this is old treatment, we had 14 species of albatross, or 13 to start with, actually, 13 species of albatross. And I mentioned earlier about if you've got a title of a book, you can then normally write it and paint it. Well, I was thinking of doing a first book, and I wanted it to be fairly short. And there were 13 species of albatross. And you've all heard of a baker's dozen. A baker's dozen is 13 birds. And so I thought that I would do my first book simply called A Baker's Dozen. But then the French got really creative. And this bird you see here, the one with all the brown on it, much browner and blacker than these others here. These are the great albatrosses, the wanderings and the royals. And this is the Amsterdam albatross, which they split off to make 14 species. So there went my book. So that didn't actually help. But the more I looked at these birds, the more I became absolutely convinced that there were more than 13 species. Take this threesome over here. They've got different colored bills, different colored heads, they have different measurements, they nest on different islands, they have different biologies. What makes a species? We split those three, or we would split those three. We've got here black-browed and Campbell albatross, we split those. Here you had wandering albatross coming in here. There's a royal albatross there. This was northern, this was southern, this was Amsterdam. So when I wrote my first book, I tore up the numbers of birds quite a bit, and albatrosses in particular. And so when I published my first book, this is the 1983 version, and I think some of you have got this book, Seabirds, an Identification Guide, published in 1983 with a foreword by Roger Torrey Peterson. He was a good friend of mine. I was a young man in those days. He took me under his wing and helped me get established. And one of the ways he did that was to buy the world rights for this book. But he said to me afterwards, he said it was an easy decision. And for those of you that are members of the American Birding Association, in the review that Ron Levine wrote, who was the editor for ABA, he simply described this book as arguably the best field guide of birds of any time or any generation. And that was a huge compliment as far as I was concerned. So this was my first book, and this stood the test of time for 40-something years. And then I decided to say to myself, is that it? I reached the age of about 60, and I said, is that it? Was that my life? And I'm fortunate to be married to a really wonderful woman, Shirley Metz. She's at the back of the audience. Shirley goes down into the Guinness Book of Records as the first lady to ski overland to the South Pole. People asked me if I was with her, and I said, don't be silly, there are no birds there. And I said, I'm not tough enough either. I said, I need to be tough. And Shirley was tough. And Shirley said to me, why don't you do a sequel? She said, there's a lot of your old book that is out of date now. You've got lots of information. And I was 60 years of age, and I said to her, well, it will probably take about 12 or so years. It took 16 years. And unlike the first book, this first book had something like 444 pages. The new book, which was published in 2021, some of you have got a copy of that. A little hint, there are some out there if you would like to purchase one. And so this book has 600 pages. It has 239 full color plates, and it has 3,824 individual paintings. And I know because it took me all weekend to count them once. And so this is the new book. And also, just like the first book was awarded Best Book of the Year and became an instant classic. And it's sold quite a few thousands, in fact, many thousands in the time it's been published. So the new treatment that we have now, whereas we had in the original book or treatment, we had wandering albatross and we had royal albatross. That was all we had. We've now split those into something like 6 or 7 different species. So we have wandering, which is the biggest. We have Antipodean, which is up there as well, and Tristan, and then Amsterdam. Those are 4 species of wandering albatross. And then we have a northern royal and southern royal. And these 2 are quite easy to tell the difference. And so these are all southern ocean birds. So those are the new way that we've handled big albatrosses. We have a group of smaller albatrosses that we created a new genus for, and that's Thalassarchi. And Thalassarchi up here, this means rulers of the deep. And then the shy albatrosses, those 3 somewhat foursome, we split those into 4 species. The black brows into 2 species, the greyhead stands alone. The bullard stands alone at the moment, but I hate to say this, well, I'm telling you that there's 22 species of albatross in the world. We're going to shortly make this into another species, split these. So we're going to have another one, northern and southern brothers, and the Indian and Atlantic have been split as well. So we're still splitting. So we're not numbers, we're still splitting. And that's good. It's like having a stock portfolio. You know, more stock splits that you get. So you get more birds to check off and more birds to chase. So these are Thalassarchi, the rulers of the deep. No change with our sooty albatrosses, just 2 species. These are the sooties. We'll go into light mantle sooties a bit later on. So these are light mantle and sooty. Notice that the solstice, which is this streak of flesh along the bill, is yellow in this bird, whereas in the light mantle sooty, it's blue, as we'll see in some later illustrations. How many of you have been to the Galapagos? Did you see the albatross? The albatrosses, you saw the albatrosses, yes. They normally arrive on the 27th of March every year and they stay until about mid-November. And this is where most people get these frame-killing encounters. And this is what albatrosses are all about. This is what makes them so fascinating. They are just such extroverts and show-offs. They dance, they scream, they toss their heads in the air, and they open their bills, they cast a net. And this is normally the first of the albatrosses that most people see. So these are the Flabastria, which is the waved albatross from the Galapagos. And then you have Laysan, black-footed and short-tailed. The Laysan, a little bit rare in these waters, but I have seen them. I'm an avid fisherman, by the way. I spend a lot of time at Nia Bay, out over Swift Shore, 20 or so, 30 miles out. And I see albatrosses every time I go out between June and July, August. Never ever miss. It's easy, you just got to get out there. Of course, there's seasickness to contend with, but that aside, so these are the Laysan albatrosses. The Laysan is one of the most, if not probably the most numerous albatross in the world. We have about 700,000 pairs of Laysan albatross, and they're mostly found in the central and western Pacific. We have one that's a bit larger, about 9 feet across and all dark, and that's the black-footed albatross. This is the common one. I sometimes see 20 or 30 in a day as I'm fishing out in the bay. And they come to the boat quite readily. And perhaps one of the rarest birds in the world. This bird was once declared extinct, and this is the short-tailed or Steller's albatross. There was a New Yorker magazine article. They gave me a reporter, a lady called Diane Ackerman, and they said, go find the rarest bird in the world. And at the time we did this was the rarest bird in the world. On about day 3, we were there. We had to climb down a 400-foot cliff, and she wasn't good at that. And she fell and broke a few ribs, but we persevered. And so this is the Steller's albatross. So you've got 4 birds that are found in the North Pacific, and all the others are found down in the southern hemisphere. And to give you an idea, this is the Southern Ocean. The Southern Ocean is the windiest, stormiest place on earth. I don't actually get seasick, which is really good. You know, seasickness, there's 2 stages. When you first get it, you're afraid you're going to die, and then afterwards you're afraid you're not going to die. You know, the one thing that's always intrigued me about being seasick, it doesn't matter how long it was since you ate a carrot, but if you're seasick, there's carrots in it. And you think about that, those carrots. I was thinking of doing a paper on it. You can do papers on more than anything these days. So anyway, these are the places that the early mariners called the roaring 40s, the screaming 60s, the furious 50s, etc. And the Southern Ocean, this is where albatrosses first evolved some 40 or so million years ago. And these birds are quite at home in these wonderfully rough mountainous seas. As I say, about the size of 24 times the continent of the United States. And to exist in these huge seas. Remember, that's a wandering albatross you're seeing there. That bird is 11 feet across. You've got waves here 20 to 30 feet high. And so they have to be not only good sailors and mariners, but the consummate masters of aerodynamics. These birds have evolved to exist in these seas. And remember, these birds, when they're young, they go to sea for not 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, but 8, 9, or 10 years. They'll fly over 2 million miles without ever touching land. Think about these birds. There's nothing quite like an albatross in the way it lives and the way it utilizes these huge waves. The largest of them all is the wandering albatross. Males are always larger and whiter than females in any given race of the great albatrosses. These are royals and wanderers, Tristan and so forth. So this is the wandering albatross. A close second is the Royal Albatross Southern Royal of New Zealand. And these are what we call the white-backed albatrosses. And I think you can see here, you've got a white back. And that white back, and notice the white tail, just a few little spots on the very tips of the central tail feathers. And so these birds are huge. These are not also birds that are around that 10.5 to 11 feet. So this is the Royal Albatross. We call them white-backed or great albatrosses because of that big white back that they've got. This is a male. It would weigh about 25 to 26 pounds, and that bird is at least 50 years of age, just looking at the plumage. And so this is what I've devoted my life to. If you can't get turned on by an albatross, head for a box. The smaller albatrosses are often called mollymawks. Molly meaning foolish, mawk meaning gull. So this is the mollymawk, corruption of 2 Dutch words. And these birds nest on mostly a little place called the Falkland Islands. I mentioned to you the Laysan albatross has 700,000 pairs. Well, this bird also has about 700,000 pairs. And all those little dots there are members of the same colony. So this is a colony of about maybe 350 or so species. And those of you going to South Georgia and the Falklands, I think later this year or next year, you will certainly visit this one colony. So these are how the black-browed actually nest. Like all of the tube-nosed birds, they only lay 1 egg at a time. And they're easily told when they're out at sea. Combination of yellow bill, white head, and those lovely black wing margins on the underwing. The name, of course, comes from that black brow that you see going through the eye, going just here. So this is the black-browed albatross. A close cousin of the black-browed albatross, we mentioned it just now, is the grey-headed albatross. And the grey-headed albatross has about a weight of about 7 or 8 pounds in weight, and about 48 or so thousand pairs, half of which nest 1 year and the other half the other year. So they nest once every 2 years. So this is the grey-headed albatross. Absolutely stunning birds, very beautiful. Look at that lovely top yellow ridge, the bottom ridge, and that wonderful rose pink tip to the bill. And then ladies, look at that mascara job around the eye. And that dark eye streak is, they say, to cut down the refraction from the waves and the strong sunlight. So this is grey-headed albatross. Okay, so now maybe you have an idea, a little bit of how wonderful these birds are. We have at the moment 22 species, and they are found mostly, 18 of those species are found in the southern hemisphere, some of the stormiest seas in the world. I'm often asked, so what makes an albatross an albatross? How can you be sure that it is an albatross you're looking at? For some of you, you are more advanced than others in the world of birding. But for those of you that are just starting, one of the things that is often confusing is the fact that the birds look alike, they're colored the same. If you take a kelp gull, for instance, you look, it's got a yellow bill, it's got a white head and dark upper wings, and even in flight, it's very similar. Again, reddish around the base of the bill, yellow bill, it's got a white head, it's got dark margins to the underwings. Very much like, in fact, the flying black-browed albatross, which also has a yellow bill, white head, and dark margins. But we look at structure when we get into birding in a more serious vein, and it's not just the colors and patterns, it's the structure of the bird. And that's very, very important. If you take a gull, for instance, a gull has a bill, upper mandible and lower mandible, and you can see that it's made up of one continuous plate. There's a hole here. I can get on the other side of that hole and I can wave at all of you through that hole. And so on the lower mandible, we have again, very, very single sheath, and so nothing there. If you look at an albatross's bill, an albatross is very, very different. Albatross has a very strong hook tip to start with, and it then has these fusion lines. And the average albatross's bill is made up of 7 interconnecting plates. And these interconnecting plates then fuse the bill together. Does that mean that any bird with fusion lines on its bill is an albatross? This would love to be an albatross, but it's not for sure. This obviously is a young frigate bird. And this lacks what all albatrosses have and no other birds have. And that's a set of these. And these are nostrils, protruding nostrils, but not just arranged in any old order. These nostrils, and it doesn't matter whether you're a wandering albatross, a black-browed albatross, a Buller's albatross, you have a set of nostrils divided, one on the left of the bill and one on the right of the bill. And this makes these albatrosses very, very unusual. If you have been down to the southern hemisphere, you'll know that the dark brown bird behind and to the left of you, this bird right here, this is a northern giant petrel. And this northern giant petrel has a bill structure that all of the other tube-nosed birds have. And if you look at it carefully, you'll see that it does have nostrils, but the nostrils are united and placed in a single tube on the top of the bird's bill. This is very unusual as well. And you know, albatrosses are members of the petrel group. And it would be true to say that all albatrosses are petrels, but not all petrels are albatrosses. So albatrosses have divided nostrils, whereas your giant petrels, your shearwaters, your storm petrels have this tube on the top of the bird's bill. With albatrosses, we have divided nostrils, some on the left, some on the right. And to put that in perspective, we have a little over 11,000 species of birds in the world, and there's only 22 of them that have divided nostrils. So this makes them very, very unusual. So an albatross is easily explained. An albatross is any of the tube-nosed birds, the petrels, that have divided nostrils that are divided and not united in a single tube. Other than that, all your Purcellariformes, your tube-nosed birds, have life histories that are very, very similar to each other. That, by the way, is a male, and that bird is at least 60 years old. Look how white it is, absolutely gleaming. Look at the size of the bird's bill. To start with, albatrosses and other petrels only come ashore to breed. And if they could have worked out how to have an egg out on the open ocean and incubated out there, they would have done, but they can't. They need to come home to nest. So these birds come in, they pair for life as a rule, they lay one egg, and then when they're not breeding, because the wandering albatrosses and the big albatrosses take so long to breed, they can only do it once every year. So these birds then spend the other part of the year, 11 months of their second year, out over the open ocean. You know, I'm an albatross man, and it hurts me to say this, but there's nothing very flashy about how an albatross actually gets its food. It doesn't plunge dive from great heights like gannets and boobies and tropic birds and so forth. And it's pretty dumb. I gotta say, there's no stealth at all. They fly around, they're up over the ocean. You can imagine these birds fly up to 1,100 miles in a single day. They're looking for roadkill. They're looking for things that are floating, a dead squid, a dead fish, or something that might be still partially alive, and in they come. So they see their prey. They see their prey, they come in, they circle, feet down. They're ready now to splash down. And they splash, making a lot of noise and a lot of fuss and motion. And as I say, albatrosses are dumb. It just so happens that the prey are dumber. And this helps because they simply paddle up, and using that large bill, they'll get hold of a squid. They'll subdue it with repeated blows of the hook shaped bill. Albatrosses are dumb, thank God. Thank God that the squid is dumber. There are times when I've seen these birds take hold of a squid fully 4 feet long. They subdue it, they get hold of it, and then they start to then eat it, and then eat it in one go. And so and down one it goes. One of the great things that I've done is rescue albatross chicks that have lost maybe a parent, and so we try to feed them to get them out to leave the island. And you'll go with a bucket of squid, and you'll hold a squid 3 or 4 feet up like this, and that bird will just open its bill. And these birds have huge gapes. You don't see it here, but look at the next few photographs. You see this line here? This whole head opens up. You can put a bucket in one of these mouths. And so they're just huge. And you'll go along, you'll take a 4-foot squid, and you'll just open its bill, and you just drop the squid in. And so they are mostly squid feeders. Our smaller albatrosses take smaller squid. And again, you can see that lovely gate line opening up all the way to here, and all albatrosses possess this. So they are mostly carrion and squid eaters, the bigger albatrosses at least. So feeding over, they turn, they face the wind, and they run into the wind, and then they're off again. I've mentioned the age of some of these albatrosses, and all albatrosses have a tendency or a propensity to live for at least 50 to 60 years. There was a very celebrated royal albatross at Taiora Heads. Some of you might have been to Taiora Heads in New Zealand. And those albatrosses, northern royal albatrosses, there was one there called Grandma, and this is Grandma. You see the black cutting line on the bill? That's a field feature. I hope some of you noticed that. That's a field feature of royal albatrosses. And Grandma was banded in 1937, and she laid eggs, and she had 4 different husbands, and she managed to raise 13 chicks in her 69 years. She disappeared in 1989. And so then we lost a champion bird. And then just recently, in the last 7 or 8 years, and I was going to say that she had 4 husbands. Okay, so this is wisdom. And in the Laysan albatross, once the chicks are a certain age, they're then left in a creche. And this is wisdom. She's coming in to find her chick, because she'll only feed her chick, and then she'll take it out and feed it to one side away from the others. Wisdom was banded in 1956. She was at least 10 years old by her plumage and other features that the researchers had. So she was reckoned to be 1946, which is just how happens my year of birth as well. So wisdom, 1946, now up to right now. So she's 78 years of age. And right now, and I want you to think about this, right now we've got wisdom. She's a 78-year-old Laysan albatross, and she's actually sitting on her 38th chick.
Oh my gosh.
And she's now into her 7th husband. As I say, good males are hard to find. And so this is Laysan albatross, and Wisdom is now she's the oldest banded bird ever, and she's the oldest bird in the world at the moment, around about 78 years of age. Flight power as well. I mentioned to you that nothing flies further than an albatross. Well, how do we know that? Well, we put little transponders on them when we track them, and so some surprising results. The champion so far has been a northern royal albatross, and that did 1,162 miles in a single 18-hour day. So just think of that. So over 1,000 miles in a single day. But we had a grey-headed albatross from South Georgia circumnavigate the Earth in 42 days. And if you look at the wandering albatross, when they leave the island as youngsters, they're going to be at sea for the first 7, 8, 9, or 10 years. They'll fly in their first year 158,000 miles minimum. And by the time they get back to their natal island, where they first left 8 or 9 years ago, they'll have flown over 2 million miles. In a lifetime, they will fly something like 10 or 12 million miles, and that's about a dozen round-trip journeys to the moon and back. Nothing flies further than an albatross. Think of your frequent flyer miles if you were an albatross. And size, of course, is another thing. I can go here and engage this albatross painting or photograph here, and you get some idea of me and the size of the bird. But to really appreciate the size of an albatross, what you really have to do is to go and get hold of one. And when you get hold of one, you'll get some idea. Forget condors, folks. You're out on condors. These are the birds. Now, I'm often asked if I have a favorite bird. Well, I do. And in fact, here are my 3 most favorite things on the planet. You can see here on the left-hand side of the screen, you've got obviously an albatross. It's got a nostril, so it's divided. So this is the light mantle sooty albatross. Got a blue solstice, not a yellow solstice. And this is the world's smallest albatross. And for me, the most beautiful. Actually, after Shirley today, that's the most beautiful thing that I've seen. And so this is light mantle sooty albatross. Next over there in the middle comes my Canon camera. Very, very important. And then, of course, over on the far right, Shirley. And of course, Shirley, not in that order, darling. So these are my 3 favorite things. And my favorite bird is the light mantle sooty albatross. It's the smallest albatross in the world. Very unique with its dark plumage and silver grey back. And look at that lovely white eye. These birds are cliff nesters, and we can get quite close to them. And if you look carefully, you'll see 2 silhouettes. There's me, and there's another person. If you're an albatross fanatic, and I am, you probably gathered that, but I am, and I can tell you that that's the most sought after shot, light mantle sooty albatross, with your own reflection in the eye. I get a lot of oohs and ahs from birders on that one. So you can just see how just beautiful these birds are. They're cliff nesters, and so when they want to fly, this is them doing their displays to each other. And when they get a bit bored with that, all they simply do is turn, they face the open sea, and they just throw themselves off. They let Newton's gravity principles come into effect. They spread their wings, and off they go. These are the most amazing birds. They court in the air because they nest on cliffs. They don't have much room to dance. And so they do aerial ballets where they touch each other with their wings and sometimes come up and nibble each other's on the tail. So these are the light mantle sooty albatrosses. They are without doubt one of the most amazing life forms in the Antarctic and subantarctic. And these do nest down in the Antarctic. Most albatrosses, it's too cold, but these do. So these are the light mantle sooty albatrosses. They have a wonderful call. The Tristan Islanders call them POs, and their head goes down on the floor, like most of the albatross species, and then they raise their head slowly and very deliberately, and let fly with a PO. Subantarctic islands, you walk around the islands for a day, and all you're hearing is the distant calls of the pew. Go to sleep at night instead of hearing traffic noise, etc. your mind is filled with the calls of the albatrosses, and all you can hear is the pew, pew, pew. They're one of the most remarkable of all birds. This is South Georgia, my favorite place on earth. If I was told that I had 7 days to live, 5 would be of South Georgia. You might say to yourself, but what about the other 2? Folks, getting there. Getting there takes 2 days of very, very hard travel. And that's even if you're in South America. I remember a November morning about maybe 15, 20 years ago, we'd had a really wonderful time on the beach with king penguins. And we were just going to finish off. We'd show them a few small colonies. And we said, well, we've got another colony. It's a bit small, but so we've saved it to last. And so we came in on the beach and they started to take shots of the penguins. And by the way, you probably know that we have 19 species of penguins. And those 19 species of penguins are divided up. These are the 2 biggest. So these are king penguins. And you'll notice that there's one big flap of skin, and there's 1 egg under there, and there's 1 egg under here. Kings and emperors do not make a nest, and they only lay 1 egg, and they're able to go. Oh no.
Didn't want to get you.
Oh, okay, thanks. Yeah, I find myself off occasionally. So king penguins and emperors only lay 1 egg, and they go walk about. And so anyway, it'd be one of those mornings. And I said we were going to show them a small colony. We said, yeah, I was going to show you a small colony, but it's kind of wall to wall. And they said, what do you mean, wall to wall? And we said, well, wall to wall. And folks, how many times have you said, and they stretch the horizon? You know, I do a lot of safaris, and you have wildebeest stretching all the way to the horizon. That's beginner stuff. This is what you call stretching to an island. This is South Georgia. Look at this, is all king penguins, all the way down through here, in through here, in through here, and even on this beach over here. This is a colony of something like 85,000 pairs, and this is king penguins. We have 500,000 pairs of king penguins outside Georgia. And I remember one morning at this king penguin colony in about the same position as this, I was sitting with a good friend of mine who's no longer with us these days, Frank Todd, and it had been raining like hell. We came ashore to get things ready for our people like yourselves that come down with us occasionally. And it was raining like mad. It was dark and it was dawn. And we had told the people, we promised them a dawn with a sun rising like a frosted orange to the east, bathing the whole landscape in beautiful yellow light. We were sitting there and it was sideways sleet and snow. And Frank said, whose bloody idea was this? And I said, Frank, I said, you must have faith. You must have faith. And he said, show me the faith. And with that, the sun suddenly started to appear on the horizon. The clouds lifted and the whole place was just filled with this yellow, beautiful alpine glow. And Frank turned to me and he said, you know, Peter, if God ever takes a holiday, he takes it at South Georgia. So for those of you that are thinking of going, good luck, you'll have the time of your life. It's one of the most beautiful places of all times. We came back with wonderful photographs of king penguins and so forth that morning. And it was as we were getting into the boats, I heard some calling, and looking up, I saw it was a male who was getting really quite excited with another female. And so I said to my my expedition leader, pick me up after lunch. I said, remember that Chinese proverb? And he said, yeah, I know, the one you keep quoting. And I said, yeah, he that is ruled by his stomach is a fool. I can eat any time. So I went up and I sat next to these beautiful albatrosses, males and females, etc. And I spent 1.5 hours. And folks, I'm approaching my 79th year, but here I am, 78 years of age. And this was the best lunch hour of my life. I've never ever had such an experience. Okay, to wind up the lecture, I'm going to ask you to become wandering albatrosses. I'm going to want to ask you to remember or to imagine that you've been sitting on a windy headland throughout all of the winter. The snow's been coming down, and now and again, these large white birds would come in about every 8 to 15 days, and they would feed you a meal. and then off they go again. This is how these birds feed, crossways in the bill. And here's our young albatross. Eventually the adults will simply stop coming. And this is a feature, by the way, of all tube-nosed birds. You can be a storm petrel, you can be a night shearwater, but your adults will feed you off until you're about a third of the weight and more than the adults. They desert you, you stand on your nest, you start exercising your wings, and then hunger takes you to sea. And that's what we call a goonie. That's a young wandering albatross. Look at the white clown-like face that it's got. Look at the lovely gingery brown underside, and the almost white, or sorry, almost all white wings with just a little bit of a black tip and trailing edge. So this is a goonie. These birds are deserted by their adults. They go to sea and they'll fly in the first year, 156, 158,000 miles. In their lifetime, or in the next 2 to 3 years, they'll fly up to 2 million miles, and their plumage will gradually change, getting whiter and whiter. They'll work out where the upwellings are, where all the birds are, and they'll join in for the daily scramble of food. Those are 2 adult wandering albatrosses, whereas the ones that we've just been looking at were the goonies, which are very, very different in colour. So these are the wandering albatrosses. So they start off white-faced and goonie-ish, which is the term we use for a young bird. And they have a white stomach, so we have a white stomach here. And then over the next 7 or 8 years, these birds will get gradually whiter and whiter. And this is a female, and here's a male. You can see the difference. The female is very much slighter in build, much smaller build, and not really nearly so cumbersome or menacing when they're on the ground or in the water. So here's our male coming in. And can you imagine that after something like 7 or 8 years, they haven't touched land once, and they've been flying around the Southern Ocean, maybe circumnavigating the Earth 4 or 5 times every year. And now those terrible things called hormones bring you back to your island. And so you've never landed on terra firma before. You come in, you look down, there are people down there. Of course, I mean albatross people. You come in, you put your undercarriage down, and we'll cut that one off at the top, a pity, but nevertheless, in it comes. And you know, albatrosses are like gliders. I mean, look how long those wings are. They can do nothing with any precision. I said in their feeding habits, they're dumb, and their landing habits, my God. It embarrasses me to say it. You've never seen it sometimes. They come in, they hit the ground once, they do 3 somersaults, they land in a crumpled heap, and they get up, they shake themselves, and they have this like sleigh walk. We have a little saying, we albatross researchers, and that is simply that if an albatross makes a landing that it can walk away from, it's a good landing. And, you know, these birds are making this landing for the first time. And if you look carefully, the bird on the right, it's whiter and it's bigger build. And this is a young male here, this is a female. And so here we have this lovely male. He's wondering what he's got to do, what should he be doing? He doesn't want to appear that he doesn't know what's going on. And then over on his right, there's a bird, a much more experienced bird, opens its wings, touches the ground with its bill, and then lets fly with this. And then with a sky point. And you might have thought that was impressive. I did. But I've got to say, I'm not wimp. I'm a little English one. I'm not big enough. I should be Michael size over there, you know? And if that was the case, because females, they don't choose wimpy males. If you choose a male that can't call with a lot of gusto and bravado, he's probably not going to be very good at bringing home the squid. So it's the females that choose the males. No, that's true. It's the females that choose the males. So this is the singles bar. This is how you actually choose your partner. This is the debutante's ball. They come together. You can see the females on the right, they're darker. The males on the left being whiter. And this is when all the fun starts. Can you imagine sitting on an island in South Georgia the wind blowing around you, the smell of penguins everywhere, there's shit on your boots. Honestly, it's glorious because you can put that into the laundry, you don't have to clean it. And so here we are on the top of an island, and you have these albatrosses coming in and landing. You can have a dozen, you can have 20 albatrosses, 11 feet wide, with their wings open. Then I'm just sitting there into tears when I see this sort of thing going on. And so these big groups, they're called gangs. And so here the birds start. I've had quite a few famous people actually in my time as a wildlife guide in South Georgia. And one of my more famous was Jimmy Stewart, the actor. He was very frail, he was very thin, he was very weak. He could not make it to the top of the island. But I was determined to get him there. So I got hold of the piano player, David Kaplan. He was a big, strong man in his 20s. I was in my 40s. And we carried Jimmy Stewart up the mountainside and we sat him down on a pedestal of grass. And he looked and he said, and he was as close as you are to the albatrosses, they take no notice. And he said, Peter, come back in 20 minutes. And I said, are you sure? He said, yes. And we went and sat for 20 minutes. And we came back up the side of the mountain. We came up and we sat down next to him. And as we sat next to him, we looked and he was crying, tears running down his cheek. And he looked and he said, Peter, my friend. And he reached out and he grabbed my hands and squeezed them. He said, Peter, my friend. He said, Hollywood has never put on such a performance. And those were the words of Jimmy Stewart, very, very nice gentleman, I must add. And so life now begins to get really great for the albatross. He now knows that they're there to choose a partner. They learn to dance like an albatross with this sway walk that they've got. They learn how to kiss like an albatross, very gentle with the bill, instead of jabbing at each other in an aggressive way. Just realizing that they have to just clatter their bills together and pass the net. It starts off as a group. As I say, you can have 20 or 30 of them all doing the same thing. But as the weeks go by, you see that they've now split into twos. So all these birds here and here and this one here, these are young birds because they're still pairing up. All the ones you see singly are birds sitting on a nest with a single egg. An incubation in this bird is the longest incubation of any bird in the world. 76 to 84 days of incubation, so that's almost 3 months. And so what this all is leading up to is finding a nest site, displaying to each other. And as I say, these birds are absolutely colossal in size. It's very important to find a place that's windy. They need wind. They need a strong wind of about 25, 26 knots average speed in order to take off. Remember, they're something like 25 with even 30 pounds in weight. Males will normally be the ones that start off the real courting. So they spend another 2 years coming back to their nest site. They only have one nest site, and so they keep coming back to it, and they'll come back to it. And then the male takes up a station on the nest and he waits for his female. She normally comes in about 11 days or so after, and as she comes in, guys, what would you do if you've been away from your parent, your partner for something like 11 months? You're standing on the nest. She hasn't fallen foul to a long line or anything like that. And you look up and there she comes. You recognize each other by sight. And so you do what any self-respecting male albatross would do. You touch your toes with your bill and you let fly with a whoop. Oh, baby. She might do 2 somersaults, she comes off, and it's just like if I'm away from Shirley for about 2 to 3 weeks, if I come back after a lecture to her. If I walked in and said, where's the tea? I probably wouldn't get my tea. But she comes up and they come closer and closer, and they start off everything with a gentle kiss of each other, and then the fun begins. And this now is the time that they will make a nest, complete the nest, lay a single white egg. And so everything leads up to the one incident, and that is getting your partner, see she's on the right hand side, getting your partner to be responsive, I guess, to the courting, and so copulation takes place. This only happens once every 2 years. It takes 40 seconds, and they get an egg. Probably that might change, but there you go. So there's an egg. It's about 6 inches by 4 inches. It weighs about a pound. And as I've mentioned, the incubation is 76 to 84 days, the longest of any bird in the world. I don't know if many of you have heard of Robert Cushman Murphy. Robert Cushman Murphy was one of the great seabirds of his time, back in the 1900s. He was a typical ornithologist. He got married, and as he got married, he bade his wife goodbye. He didn't stay around till the evening or any of that stuff. He jumped in a car and drove down to the coast, got onto a little brig called the Daisy, a whaling boat, and he sailed south to the Southern Oceans. He was down there for 4 years without returning home. And every now and again, he would send his wife a letter describing the things that he had seen. And there's a book, if you're interested in books, there's a book called Logbook for Grace. And Logbook for Grace is the stories of all of his adventures. But one of his most famous lines, especially as an albatross man, was when he saw his first albatross going south from Montevideo. And he wrote to his wife, Grace, "I have now joined a higher cult of mortals, for I have seen the albatross." So spoke Robert Cushman Murphy, and he named things after his wife. He was pretty lovesick by the sound of it, but this, go back, this glacier in the background here, this is the Grace Glacier named after his wife. And so this is, it's a very famous glacier. Incubation shifts average 8 to 10 days, sometimes as little as 2 days, the longest 40 days. They can lose up to quite a bit of weight while they're sitting on the egg. So the incubation stints are longer at the beginning, but as they get shorter and shorter towards the incubation, the chick hatching, the adults get very, very excited. It always intrigued me why they got so excited, but then one afternoon I did actually then discover why. I picked up the egg to weigh it, and as I did, I could feel the trembling inside the egg. And the egg was actually moving, and then I heard cheep, 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 and the chick was calling to the adult through the egg. And it takes about 7 days for the chick to actually hatch out of the egg. And one way that you know is you look towards the back end of the bird, and you can just see something creeping out there. And if you get down on your hands and knees and you crawl slowly across, you'll come into young Master Albatross taking his first look at South Georgia, and what a splendid place it is. Even in the depths of winter, South Georgia's beaches are full of king penguins. And so king penguins, tumbling glaciers, there's 100 glaciers on South Georgia, and the spine of mountains go up 9,500 feet. So there's a guard stage, as there is with most birds, but there's a guard stage. The chick is brooded very closely by one of the adults, taking something like 8 or 9 days at a time. And notice that it's always calling the food. It's got a voracious appetite, and its feed is fed by regurgitation. Regurgitation is really quite an exceptional thing. It allows birds to swallow and then hold in the upper chamber of the stomach, the ventriculus, partially digested food, and it can then fly several thousand miles collecting food. So these birds are very, very good at bringing back big payloads. Now, some birds, like puffins that many of you will have seen, say here in the Pacific Northwest, but also in the North Atlantic, these birds use their bills as a shopping basket. You might not know this, but there's a competition each year to actually work out which puffins, Canadian or Alaskan or British, hold the most fish in their bills. The record at the moment is 47 fish in the bill. But even when you fill the bill with 47 fish, that's nothing to what an albatross can do. The fact that an albatross can swallow food, when an albatross leaves its chick on the nest, it flies out to the open ocean. In 1989, we put transponders, satellite transponders, to track them from space. And no albatross pair did anything less than 10,000 kilometers, and in some cases 15,000 kilometers on one feeding flight. I'm not talking about migration of an Arctic tern flying from the north to the south. I'm talking of going shopping just to collect food on one trip, 10 to 15,000 kilometers. These birds are amazing birds. It brings them into contact with a lot of different fisheries, and this is one of the big problems that we're having. They work out where the commercial fishing is, especially long lining, and many of our birds end up on the hook of a long line. And for those of you that don't know what a long line is one single line of rope, and about every meter there's a hook, and they bait it with squid. And what do the albatrosses eat? Squid. And you know, when you lose an adult albatross, you don't lose just one, because the chick needs two parents to feed it. It's got such a voracious appetite that it cannot survive with one adult alone. So one adult might fall prey to a hook of a longliner, but that means the chick will die as well. So you have two deaths. Assuming that our chick manages to survive and it has adults that feed it and do not end up on the long line of a fishing trawler, they'll be in that nest 270 to 290 days. They'll see the first snows of winter coming in, and snows of winter, the productivity actually slows down for the winter, but they still do grow and they still do put on weight. I'm a member of the old school. I was from the romantic era of research. And in my days of research, I would see the adult land and I would rush up to my chick and I would take it off its nest, delve into my rucksack, and I would pull out a set of English scales. And I would put the chick on the scales and I would weigh it, see there's 6 kilos. And then the adult would come, I would take the chick off the scales, it would get fed, and I'd put it back on the scales, and it would be then 7.5 kilos, 1.5 kilos. These days they use computers, and you can be sitting in an office in Oxford in England, and you can actually work out just how much your chick is just being fed. But I preferred the old days. Give me a set of scales and I'm very, very happy. This is the time when these huge storms occur, and sometimes we have 3 feet of snow being deposited, and these chicks just sit around. If they leave the area, they will not get fed, so they know that they have to stay there. And so I always liken these birds to French poodles with bills. And so here you go, and they exercise their wings, getting everything ready for their first flight. Now, I would like to say that after all this work, longest incubation of any bird in the world, sitting in a nest for 270 days, that our chick was as cute and as cuddly as some of those lovely Southern Ocean penguins, like emperor penguins. It hurts, but I can't lie. But I got to tell you, the young goonie, the young albatross, is about the ugliest damn thing you've ever seen. After all this work, it can hardly stand on its legs. It's so weak. It can't fly. It just sits there. And I kid you not, the adults come and they come to their chick, and they come and they look and they take one hard look, as if to say, what on earth have we created here? They feed their chick one last time, and crossways in the bill, as you can see there. And then they head to the open ocean, well, to the headland, and then fly out across the open ocean. They desert their chick, and their chick is left looking forlornly out to sea, wondering just where the next meal will come from, but it will not get another free meal. So these albatrosses are deserted. And this is a big time for the researchers as well. You want your birds to survive. And the thing is, as a researcher, when I found one of these birds, I've got to wait 7 years. I've got to wait 7 years before it will return. Just think of that. This is really long-term research. One of the great things that I love doing is being able to take people like yourselves to South Georgia and to show you and to share my love, my passion, my wonderment of these birds and the places that they live, to people like yourselves that care. I remember just a few years ago, we were almost at the end of the trip. We were up on South Georgia, Cryan Island, And there were 9 of us, a small group of people, and the albatrosses were right in front of us, bathed in that wonderful evening light. And we were taking beautiful shots. Every eye had a highlight. And then one of my group just said, "What's that?" And then walking towards us was a goonie. This bird was 6 weeks too late. It should have left the island 6 weeks before. And I turned around and I said, "It's a goonie." I said, "It should have left long ago, long ago." And the wind was beginning to get up. And as it got up, the bird came and walked right past us and got and stood on the headland and opened its wings. The bay now was becoming more scarred with white caps. And I said, "Quick, quick, quick." And we ran and they followed me down. We got down underneath the bird. And I said to everybody, "Get your cameras ready, put it on fast shutter speed and continuous shutter speed." And I said, "Put it on a good ISO number." I said, "You might get the shot of a lifetime here." And so we sat there and we waited and waited, the wings out, occasionally would jump up, then lose confidence, jump up again. And then it took a little bit of more of a jump, and then suddenly kicked itself off. And it was amazing. The people on the left of me, 2 younger people, had to throw themselves into the grass. The albatross missed them by 2 inches. And you know, there were only 9 of us that night, but we let out a cheer that you could have surely heard in Alaska. And we watched in awe as that albatross went down, cleared the island. And as it cleared the island, it went to the left. And I turned to my group and I said, "Crikey." Said, "It's made the wrong turning, it's flying west, it should be trying going to the east." And I swear, folks, it was as though the bird heard me, because it suddenly turned and faced the other way, to the right, to the northeast, and headed for the coast of Africa. And so begins one of the greatest survival stories of all time. The survival of those lone albatross is often as not appearing as a small lonely speck against a wild and savage ocean, an ocean that is the fiercest and most unforgiving ocean in the world. And it will roam these areas for the next 7 to 8 years of its life. And doing so, it will turn from the goonie into one of the most remarkable birds in the world, if not the most remarkable bird in the world. And that is Diomedia exulans, the great sea warrior. Well, folks, I guess I've blown my cover. I've been in love with albatrosses ever since my first one, seen now well over 60 years ago. And it doesn't matter whether I'm working on the ship, watching as they cross and recross the wake without so much as a beat of their wings, or whether I'm on an island with them watching their crazy breeding antics. When I see an albatross, I still see them with the eyes of a child. My mind is filled with wonder, with enchantment, and with a certain amount of disbelief. After all, these are albatrosses, the nomads of our home planet Earth. Thank you.
Are you able to take a few questions?
Yes.
So we'll have, if there's any questions in the room, you can raise your hand, and then if you have any online, we'll go ahead and ask folks to put it in the chat, and we'll go ahead and read it.
Birds that have what I would call the dark eye makeup. Is that something that they've developed? Like these sports figures do, that put the dark charcoal under their eyes instead of sunglasses. Is that their version of sunglasses if they're in a primarily in an ocean that gets a lot of bright sun?
Yeah, the question is about the coloration of the pigments of feathers and their skin around the eye of the albatross. There's 22 species of albatross in the world, and every single one of them has what I call dark mascara around the eye to some extent or other. Some are named after it, like the black-browed albatross, because of the black brow. And it's been suggested, and nobody's ever argued with it, that this coloration around the eye is primarily to cut down the light refraction and reflection from the bright surface of the sea when they're so close to the waves, and especially when the sun's behind them. And so that would certainly be the case. The coloration of the whites around the back of the eye, that's to do with the come get me sexual symbol. If you don't have the right colors of skin, it's like gulls that you might be more familiar with. Some gulls have purple skin around the eyes, some have pink, some have maybe more carmine. And that indicates to a bird that might be interested in breeding with them, that indicates that they are ready to hang out. And so part of it is to do with sunlight, and part of it is to do with sexual attraction.
How have the
Yes.
numbers of wandering albatross done? Have they leveled off or do they continue to decline? And what's being done to try and save them?
Let me tackle the first question. Wandering albatrosses, how are they and where are they in terms of their numbers? The two epicenters of wandering albatross distribution are South Georgia, where we have 10,000 pairs, and also on Prince Edward Islands, Marion and Prince Edward Islands in the Indian Ocean. To have a base on that. I can tell you that up until recently, quite recently, I mean up to about 20 years ago, but we were losing wandering albatrosses at a huge rate. And we went from something like 12,000 birds, sorry, 12,000 pairs, down to something like 600 pairs.
Oh my gosh.
I then joined forces with now King Charles, and King Charles and myself launched a little thing called Operation Albatross, Save the Albatross. And then around South Georgia, they just got the fishing boats to set their nets, so their lines at night. And just with that one little change, although not so little if you're up all night, as opposed to during the day, but with that one little change, we cut our death toll from over 500 albatrosses a year down to just 2 or 3. And so we've seen a good comeback with the wandering albatrosses in South Georgia. If you want a horror movie, go home and put on albatrosses, mouse eating albatrosses. It's terrible, it's awful, but if you've got a good stomach. So on the Indian Islands, the Indian Ocean Islands, the wandering albatross there are in dire trouble. The mice are attacking not only the chicks, but also the adults as well. And we've got the other half of the world population on that island. Last week alone, we had $146,000 that we collected, going around and doing talks like this, making people aware, etc. And so we've still got that to contend with. We will be making an eradication attempt in 2 years from now, where we cover the whole island with butyficum, which is a rat poison anticoagulant, and we hope to get rid of all of the mice in actual fact on those islands. So you've got 22 species of albatross, 18 face extinction within our children's lifetime, and that hasn't changed for the last 10 years. So albatrosses are not doing well. And all I can say is that an ocean without albatrosses would be like life without laughter. Sorry, I don't know. Okay, thank you so much.
Any questions online?
Thanks.
Any other questions in the room? I had just wanted to ask about the goonies when they take off and start to go look for food. Do they meet up with some of the adults to kind of help them learn how to eat, or they just happen to have found some prey?
Yes, the question is, having never seen what a squid looks like, because by the time they get it, it's regurgitated and it's not what you would want to eat. When they get out to sea and they get out there and they join the other birds, it's a little bit like chasing each other. They see that the birds are trying to rip, because birds will form groups and then rip in different directions and then pull the squid apart. And so that's what they're doing, and so they'll do that, and then they'll take one first mouthful and they say, hey, this is like what one of that used to bring. And it really is that simple, and they seem to know exactly how to do it and what to do. They're hardwired. It's like a cuckoo. Our cookies in England are host parasites, and I guess some of you also are here. And if you can imagine a cuckoo in, say, Britain, at a property about 40 acres in England, and we put ponds in for the reef warblers, a lot of such small birds. And we have cuckoos coming in most years, and they'll take out the eggs of the host species, and they'll lay their single egg in, and then that egg is hatched, and then it's brought up as a reed warbler, or as a chat, or as a stone chat, or whatever it might be. And then the adults go away. The young cuckoo never sees its adult. It doesn't know that it's a cuckoo. And then it flies down to Africa, and it seems to know when to stop. And then 2 years, 3 years later, it seems to know what to turn around. It seems to know that caterpillars are what cuckoo should really be eating, and it does that. And then when it starts to want to breed, it finds itself going cuckoo, cuckoo, cuckoo. Somewhere else, there's another bird that's never seen that on the cuckoo before, and they come on, and cuckoo, cuckoo. They face each other and get on with it. And it's all hardwired intelligence. We have a lot to learn. Yeah. Yes,
We
it's
just
that.
one more question.
What allows birds to reproduce into their 70s and 80s?
Can I anticipate your question, because this is, Estelle and I involved with travel with them for many, many years, going back 30 odd years. And one of the most common questions I get when I'm working as a field guide on these ships is that I can tell that story with wisdom and, 78 years of age, and the ladies will gradually get enough confidence and they'll say, you were talking about that albatross. I'll say, yes. He says, well, I was wondering, I was wondering, and just as Estelle pulled her mask a little bit tighter to protect herself, he said, I was wondering, you were going to probably mention the N word. And they don't have that. No. Okay, thank you so much.
All right, let's give a round of applause. Thank you, everybody on Zoom, and have a good night here in the room. Bye now.
Thank you for your love.
Thank you.